Hey, it's time to gather around the water cooler to talk the SNL Hall of Fame.
Hi, welcome to the Saturday Night Live Hall of Fame Water Cooler Podcast. You know, kind of a short, simple title. Or to put it another way, the SNL HOFH2L Podcast. just to, hashtag it. I'm Joe.
And I'm Shari.
And we're sitting here next to the water cooler, ready for this week's discussion.
Yep. Are you filling up your cup, Joe? I'm filling mine up.
And I'm good. All right, let's do this.
Okay, we're going to start it off by talking about this week's episode of the SNL Hall of Fame with the fabulous Thomas Senna and his special guest, Jamie Burwood. Jamie is a OG SNL Hall of Fame guest. She's been on a couple of times, and I believe all of her nominees have gotten in. Christopher Walken and
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell, thank you, Joe, because I blinked out. And our latest nominee, she finally got in season 5, Molly Shannon. So
Yes.
Jamie's on a roll. Let's see if she can keep it up with Shari Oteri. Did you want to continue on and make?
So those two, they had a great discussion. They covered a lot. There's plenty left to discuss. They brought up that Sherry's often paired up with Will Ferrell. Who, they performed in the Groundlings together. They started at Saturday Night Live at the same time. Will Ferrell, Shari Oteri, Chris Kattan. Basically, Saturday Night Live cleaned house around season 20. They got rid of those bums, Chris Farley, Mike Myers, and Kevin Nealon. No, they were great. It was just, they did their term. It was time
for a change.
It was time for a change. And then they brought in, Will Ferrell, Chris Kattan, David Kegner, Daryl Hammond, and our focus for today, Shari Oteri.
Thank you, Joe. That was a really good lead in.
Yes.
Recap. Thank you. You're coming up with all the good words, and I'm somehow blanking.
So cool.
I think we're ready with that great recap. I think we're ready to talk about
point counterpoint.
Yes.
Okay. So, let's go into pros and cons. All right, now this week I'm going to take the pros with Shari, and you'll take the cons.
Yep, we're switching places.
All right. As far as the pros go, the first thing, and they mentioned this on the other episode, she is very energetic. And the word I want to add on to that is she's energetic to the point where all of her characters are twitching. I mean, she's just literally like shocking, just, like with her characters, Laura, or who's the first one? Adele, and who's the other one? The one that Colette Rairdon. I don't want to bring her up because she probably has a reason to twitch a little bit because she has a big, box of prescriptions that she's on. But yeah, Shari's very energetic to the point where she's twitching, gives 110%, and also she's just a hair below chewing the scenery. She's, not hamming it up. She's not. Everything that she's doing with her energy seems appropriate and called for, and it makes sense within the character. So I just want to point out that she never ever sleepwalks through a part. That's the first pro I got in your con.
Okay, Joe, that is excellent. And she is very high energy. And Jamie Burwood said that same thing. In fact, maybe not her exact words, but her words were she brings a zaniness and a wackiness that is unparalleled. That was Jamie's words, and you pretty much reiterated them, Joe. Unfortunately, I'm here to bring the con. And that wackiness and that zaniness and that shout, she likes to shout. She
Mm-hmm.
shouts a lot. So her characters, Rita Del Vecchio, and you mentioned Colette Reardon, and of course, Simma Down Lady.
Mm-hmm.
Very over the top, very shouty, all of them. And sometimes this repetitive habit with the shouting, with the so over the top, you and Jamie say that's a positive. A lot of viewers, and I've heard it from a lot of viewers over the years, because I was watching her back in the day, felt like that was too much, like she was trying too hard. So, yeah, she's not sleepwalking. She's almost the opposite of sleepwalking. And that gives viewers a lot of fatigue. And I think people got a little tired of that shtick. So that's my con. Back to you, Joe.
I got it. No, and I get to the point where, yeah, because that happens with Saturday Night Live, where even the best characters get old. Hence why she got there in the first place. Like Chris Farley was doing Van Down by the River, which to me is one of my favorite sketches ever. That first one with Christina Applegate. I mean, that to me is one of the top 5 sketches. However, it got old. And that's why they had to get rid of Farley, bring in new people, and that's how Cheri got there. So, yes, that happens at Saturday Night Live. I agree. And with her in particular, yes, the shouting and the energy and it does wear thin. So I agree with that. So, okay, my next pro is something I personally picked up on when I was doing all this research is she does characters of all ages. And it's almost to the point where it's like the same character just at different spots in the character's life. Like she did Althena, which is this hyper character that visits the pilot. Um, Ariana, the Spartan cheerleader. We have to mention her, but we'll get back to
Of
that.
course.
And then Laura Zimmerman, the character she did with Chris Kattan, the hypersexed couple. And then Rita, the porch dweller. And then finally Colette Reardon, the prescription taker. And it's like this, it's almost like the same person at different stages of the character's life. And it's cool to see the same actor being able to do that. I just thought that was kind of unique. And I enjoyed seeing that.
Okay, Joe, that is an excellent point. She really does put her whole self into her characters, and she does do a variety of ages. And the observation you made about it being almost like the same character at different points in their life was very interesting. But I'm going to go con now, and this is a biggie. And Jamie and Thomas discussed this quite extensively. And that's the fact that A, she didn't do a lot after Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
Little bit here and there, some voice work, a couple of TV episodes, nothing major. I guess she was on Broadway. Not, I don't even remember hearing about that, but apparently she was on Broadway. But it was very short lived. I think she's had some personal stuff. She keeps it pretty quiet. But the other part of this that's bigger to me is she's never really come back to the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be curious to see if she even comes back for the 50th anniversary, because I do not believe she was at the 40th. So she didn't really make a connection. Like so many of them stay in touch. Like look at Dana and David have
Mm-hmm.
their podcast, Fly on the Wall. Cheri seems like she kind of disconnected from SNL altogether. And I'm sure she had her reasons. But that is a big reason that voters are going to be like, well, she doesn't care enough to come back to the show. Why would I waste a vote on her and get her into the very hallowed halls of SNL Hall of Fame? So I think that's going to be a biggie. I think that might even hinder her from getting that 10% that she needs to just stay on the ballot. So I guess only time will tell, right?
That is a great point. Because here's something else. Because that whole trio of Ferrell, Oteri, Kattan, they all started at the same time. It's kind of like all 3 of them went in separate directions. And when Will Ferrell hosted Saturday Night Live like 3 times, or the first 3 times, or he always seemed to bring back an old sketch. Like he did Jeopardy. He also did that one couple, the middle school singers with Anna Gasteyer.
Right.
And you would think at least once that they would, when Will Ferrell's hosting, that they would do the cheerleaders. Like, because that to me is as iconic as, Farley and Spade, Wayne and Garth.
Right.
Like Will Ferrell, because like we mentioned over and over again, Ferrell and Oteri, they physically look good together. Like almost in this, not exactly like this, but almost in a Laurel and Hardy type way, where Will Ferrell's tall, Sheri's short, and then she brings the energy to make up for it. So she's, in a scene with Will Ferrell, and she's able to catch your eye with her energy, which is both a pro and a con, So,
yeah, I agree. I guess only time will tell. I guess what we really need to do here is encourage people to vote.
Yes.
Vote. If you think Cheri is deserving, vote. Because if you don't, she's not gonna she's not gonna stick around so you can vote for her next time. So if you're gonna vote, because people left last season. Justin Timberlake is gone. Several others are gone because they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't make.
They did. The 5 seasons came and went, and there are some who didn't get the 10% and didn't get to come back this season. So think about that. That's why Joe and I do this pro and con thing. And now I think we're ready to. Are we ready to move on now, Joe? Are you good?
Yeah.
All right. We are going to move on to hopes for season 50, and it's only like 4 weeks away. Yay! I can't believe it either.
Believe it. I need a distraction from this election, and what better way to digest the election better than with Saturday Night Live? I need Saturday Night Live to take all of this craziness of the world, not just the election, but just everything that's going on, and I need to see it through the prism of Saturday Night Live.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm so excited. Our hopes for season 50 theme today is first-time hosts. We're going to talk about first-time hosts, and Joe inspired this idea. Joe, do you want to talk just a little bit about how this all came about? Because I know it has throwback roots for you, nostalgic roots for you. So why don't you let the listeners know all about it?
I couldn't. And by the way, that's a joke. That's a joke to everyone who knows me, because I talk about this to people that don't even want to hear it. So the fact that I'm on a podcast right now and it's the perfect opportunity to talk about it, I just wanted to make that one joke of going, nah. Nah, I'm good. Let's move on. No. So, okay, here's how this list came about. It was about 2006, and Peter Sarsgaard they announced, or whatever, like on the bumper, that Peter Sarsgaard was going to be the next week's host. And he's a fine actor, everything, nothing against him, but just at the time, I had no idea who he was. And I'm like, man, it's really random who they get to host Saturday Night Live for the first time, like aside from John Goodman, Tom Hanks, Alec Baldwin, Steve Martin, and such. But as far as, who gets to host for the first time, it's random because they're usually rising up in fame. Like their TV show is becoming popular. They're about to be in a bunch of movies. Like they just signed a 3-year or 3-movie contract or something. Like they're about to be popular. And another person of note is the fact that Bradley Cooper hosted like the February before The Hangover came out. So it is like you have to really pay attention to who's popular right now and like who's been on the rise, and then match that to, did they host yet? And then if they didn't, then they're most likely gonna, and that's where I try and came up with this list. And I just want to give one more shout out to my mom, because I used to play this game with my mom until she just lost interest, and it became hard. But anyway, one year I was like, hey, I made my list. And I went on Internet Movie Database, tried to see who was, on the rise and when their movie was coming out. And like, oh, this person has 3 movies coming out this year. And, it's around in the fall. So they probably will be on Saturday Night Live to promote it and stuff like that. And I'm trying to carefully analyze and dates and stuff like this. And then I kept telling my mom, hey, Mom, they're going to, the show's going to come back. And you better, because it's kind of cheating if you
Right.
see who's hosting the first episode and then you pick. So I kept hounding her. And then I go, Mom, come on, let's just do this. And she goes, all right, fine. And she takes an issue of Entertainment Weekly and just flips through it and goes, her, him, her. And then made her list just off the cuff. And then sure enough, beat me that year. I think she picked out 2 more than me. And I'm like, how? And then and that's another point I want to make is it's kind of random. And then the last thing I'll make to segue back to the podcast. So originally, the way I used to play it is I made out a list of 25 names because you figure maybe half the people hosting Saturday Night Live would be first time hosts. There'll probably be 12 new hosts, so you figure 25 would give us odds. But for the podcast, just to keep it simple, do a whole 25. Yeah, I guess we'll go back and forth talking about who we think is going to host for the first time in the 50th year.
And also, I think we should also just mention very briefly, if we think they're on the road to possibly returning, if they do get asked, and possibly becoming a Hall of Famer. And then as they show up throughout the season, Joe, we'll come back and look at that and talk about their performance and whether it lived up to expectations and whether we see them being asked back and get continuing on the road to see if we're on target. So that'll be fun to watch. And also, one more thing, you listeners out there, if you have guesses that you want to send, our email's at the end because I don't know by heart yet because this is only our 2nd episode. So listen to JD. He'll tell you our email and let us know who you think the first timers are going to be. I know that the Saturday Night Network already has this up on their Instagram page, and I tried not to look at it too much. I already have my guesses, so I didn't get spoiled or anything. But we'd like to know from our listeners what you think as well, because maybe it's different from what was in the SNN statistics. So we're curious.
Could be wrong.
They could be wrong.
Something that we don't,
Absolutely. All right. Did you want to start us off, Joe, with your first possible host?
Because this is a perfect example of who I think should host. I'm going to go in no particular order except for this first person. She has been on my list for years, and it makes me mad every single week that I see she's not hosting. So the fact that who's the first person I want to put on this pod is Zendaya from Spider-Man and Euphoria, and she's just a great actress. She, is out there. She's it. She's the new young actress. And, she's been in the Spider-Man movies for years. And I'm like, oh, well, she's in the Spider-Man movies, the HBO show. Yeah, she's the new young talent. So, and then week after week and year after year, just been eluding me. And I know she's and I'm not gonna take her off my list until she hosts. So that's my first pick.
Oh, Joe, we're simpatico. We're simpatico. She's so obvious. She had 2 huge hits last year, Doom 2 and Challengers, which they talked about on an episode, on the Dakota Johnson episode. But they didn't have Zendaya last year. So Zendaya, I always butcher her name.
I don't know either.
I'm sorry if you're listening to this, but
I'm sure she is.
And everybody butchers my name, so I hate doing that. I think it might be Zendaya. She wasn't my number 1. I do have mine in the order that I think they're they're likely to be asked. Because I did go more with people that I think they're really going to ask. And I think she's
Okay.
one that they have to do. But I want to do my number one. I think she's obvious. She's been all over the internet.
Okay, yeah.
She is the it girl of summer. You know they always have to do an Olympian in an Olympic year. So you know who I'm talking about.
Okay.
The fabulous gymnastic rubber band that is Simone Biles. Will she come back? Unlikely. We know what the Michael Phelps debacle was like. But he was on everybody's mind. He was all over the internet. She is everywhere. There are memes featuring Simone everywhere. She has a documentary on Netflix, and she's got a bunch of medals. So, yeah, this is definitely, I think she's a definite. I think she's going to be a September or October host. But I guess only time will tell. You're next.
So, okay, my next pick is the one who's also, again, kind of similar to Zendaya. Like, he just seems obvious. He's another guy on the rise, and I'm not even going to build him up that much. Glenn Powell, he was in the movie Twisters. He was in Top Gun, Maverick. He just looks like a movie star, like a generic. He just looks like, with the perfect teeth and everything. And again, this is another example of like when you're making out the list and you're seeing who's on the rise, this guy. And
yeah,
so it's almost inevitable that he will. So when I was making out my list, I was like, him, like it was like easy, like moving on, move along.
Yeah. Well, Joe, another point in your favor for Glenn Powell is he cameoed on the Sydney Sweeney episode last season.
That's right.
Now, do we think he's going to be a returning? I feel like echoes of Jacob Elordi. Like there's going to be a lot of "he's so handsome" sketches. Do you think he's?
I mean, you know what? I mean, he could be like Chris Hemsworth, where he's like,
oh, that's true,
a talented actor, and then he could turn around and do the comedian thing.
That's true.
So I mean,
only time will tell.
Here's this is the weird thing about going off the first timers list is it's because how about this? Like he did Twisters, Top Gun, and like a Netflix show, and they all seem serious. Maybe after he hosts Saturday Night Live, he'll start doing comedies, and then it'll cycle through, like because he's funny in the movies, he's gonna be the guy that comes back to host Saturday Night Live, and then lightning in a bottle will strike, and he'll be in that one skit that everyone's talking about that's viral on YouTube, and then it just dominoes from there. So.
All right. Well, speaking of serious actors who are on the rise, I think he should have been asked a couple years ago, this actor that I'm going to mention now. But I don't know how they can't ask him because he is playing Lorne freaking Michaels in Saturday Night, the Jason Reitman movie that if you're listening to this podcast, you know all about. You've watched the trailers nerdily, like Joe and I and JD and Thomas and Jamie, I'm sure. Looks amazing. He is terrific. He was terrific as a Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans. Not Steven Spielberg, but we all know it was.
Wink.
And he just nailed it. And I'm super excited because I have a friend and her husband is a big autograph hunter in Los Angeles. And he actually took pictures with Gabriel and said he's the nicest, one of the nicest he's ever met. So that makes me even more excited that Gabriel LaBelle is going to be a big star and hopefully be an SNL host. I think he's a gimme. I mean, wouldn't it be great to see him and Lorne in a sketch with a young Lorne and an old Lorne? How hilarious would that be? So I think it's a gimme. I can't imagine they won't do it, but maybe it'll be another actor from that movie, but it will be somebody in that cast.
He's on my top 25 list, and everything that you said about it being a gimme, because it would be great to do a Lorne off where the skit was funny, but it didn't get the right laugh.
Very good.
Paul liked it, but then again, did it really deserve to be in the first half hour? like just because and on top of it, they need to promote that movie, and they need to have an actor from that movie on the show. It'd be weird not to, like
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you said, it has to be someone from the movie, like especially someone playing someone else from the movie.
Right.
It can't just be because how about this? I also want to mention that I think it's kind of weird that William Dafoe he hosted last year, which is around the time when they were filming that movie. So it's like, was he doing research or like it just seemed anyway? But no, it would just be weird if they had J.K. Simmons or William Dafoe or someone else, that's in the cast of that movie. That's not playing, or I guess they're all playing someone, but I'm just saying it isn't playing.
Not one of the main.
Yeah, but it needs to be someone that's playing a cast member, or if not, Lorne. And then yes, they need to do a Lorne off or something. And I agree with everything. So, and then I'll move on to my pick, which is okay. So this one is someone who I think could be in the Hall of Fame. Yes, as a host, obviously. And that person is Nick Kroll. I hope I'm saying his name right.
You are.
And
that one I know.
And yeah, he had his own sketch show. He's friends with John Mulaney. He auditioned for Saturday Night Live. He's talented at doing characters. He's really genuinely funny. And I believe that, yeah, he would be a great host. And then it would just be like obvious. And I'm sure he'll be such a great host that he'll be asked to return. So
I agree. And he's friends with a lot of the cast already. And a lot of them have been on his animated show, Big Mouth.
Yes.
He's had a lot of SNL, I think current and past, on that show. So he'd be a great, yeah, I feel like why hasn't he been asked? That's excellent. Excellent.
He's very SNL adjacent,
Yes.
Right?
That's an excellent guess.
So, and then you're next.
All right. Yes, I am. And speaking of funny, this gentleman is a huge fan favorite. And it's funny because I think a lot of us took him very for granted and didn't realize how funny he was until he left. And he's been doing things. He had a show, it didn't make it. I think it only made it one season. But now he's coming back. And he's coming back to a CSI franchise, CSI Origins. And I know it's on CBS and not NBC, but CSI is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think not only that, but he just did some voice work in Inside Out 2, the Pixar movie that was terrific, if you haven't seen it. And of course, I'm talking about the absolutely gut-bustingly funny drunk uncle, Mr. Bobby Moynihan. What? Yes. Come on. Yeah. He's done cameos. Let the guy host. He'd be so great. I think he'd work fantastically with Heidi, with Mikey, obviously with Keenan.
Oh, yeah.
Give us Bobby Moynihan in season 50. Come on. He deserves to host an app.
Yes. And then he could be a returner, Hall of Famer and all that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, he is universal. He's more than drunk uncle. Yeah, he does.
All right, Joe, let's do our wishes now.
Okay.
This means people that we think probably not likely, but we would love to see it happen. And I'm going to go first if that's okay.
Please, because just on a side note, before the show started, she let it slip who it might be, and I've been drooling at the mouth waiting for this moment. So let me take another sip of water from the water cooler as
Oh, I'm going to take a sip too.
Okay, go for it.
Because this is a juicy one.
Yes.
So I don't know that this is going to happen. Political nominees don't get a whole episode. They usually just get cameos. It happens rarely. And when it does, it's usually a disaster. I will not name any names. But I'm really hoping that Kamala and Tim will joint host an episode in maybe late October, just before the election. How great would that be? And how much would we love? We know Maya's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
How much would we love to see Maya and Kamala and Tim and whoever is going to play him
Steve Martin.
face off? I don't think Steve's going to do it. But whoever does it, how funny would that be? Yeah. How great would that be? How much would the internet break if that happened? So that's my wish. What do you think, Joe?
Because the other guy hosted, on his own, equal time. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So my honorable mention dream host, who I think, you wouldn't think that this guy, would be a Saturday Night Live host, but if he did, I think he would be insanely incredible, and that is Gary Oldman.
Oh, yes.
He plays every different type of character. Like, there's internet memes that show all the different characters he's played in movies over the years, like Dracula, and he was Commissioner Gordon in Batman. He was in The Fifth Element. And I'm just like, imagine putting him on Saturday Night Live with all these wigs and costumes and in a sketch show where he has free reign to do, not necessarily free reign, but where he is able to do different characters in 90 minutes. Let's see him, break free, and instead of playing one character per movie, let's see him do multiple characters in 90 minutes.
I agree, Joe. And he's an actor that, he's one that's known for being so serious. Mm-hmm. So how much fun would it be to get to see him play with the cast?
I mean,
so a great one to end on.
Yes.
A great one to end on. All right. Well, it looks like it's almost time to put away our water bottles. Mm-hmm. But before we do, we have to tell you, we got a great one coming up. The SNL Hall of Fame, episode number 3, is a terrific cast member. You want to take it from there, Joe?
Yes, I do. He is someone who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'll just go right into it. I'm not going to preamble it. It's Garrett Morris. He was very underappreciated when he was a part of the first 5 years, but then when you saw him, it's like, duh. Like, he doesn't deserve. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because of the first 5 years. I feel like all of them do, and they all need to go through the process. Of.
Yes, I agree, and we're going to talk a lot more about this in our episode next week. So please tune in to the SNL Hall of Fame with the fabulous JD and Matt and Thomas Senna, who are going to be joined by the awesome Darren Patterson from SNL Nerds. Mm-hmm. If you haven't listened to SNL Nerds, it's hilarious. Him and John Trumbull are terrific. They break down episodes. They talk about SNL movies. And Darren is a wealth of knowledge, and he's going to share his knowledge of Garrett Morris. Hasn't been on since season 3, but the 2 that he's talked about, Tom Hanks and
Dana
the
Carvey.
Other one is Dana Carvey. Oh, how could I forget him? One of my favorites. Mm-hmm. So I know Darren's going to be a great guest. I know we're going to have a lot to talk about next week because Garrett's an amazing cast member. So until then, we're leaving the water cooler, right,
Joe?
Yes,
putting my paper cup into the little, bin that we have here, that little 2-foot high, garbage can that you always see at Office Max.
Yep. And my cup is joining you.
All right.
So until next week, this is Shari and
Joe. We'll see you next time.
Next time.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. To connect with Joe and Shari, join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/SNLHOF. To email the cast, write to snlhofwc@gmail.com. Please subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. to podcasts and such.